Hey y'all, it's Thomasina. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. My name is Thomasina and I am a model, content creator, among many other things, based in New York City, and I'm looking for a new apartment. So in this video, I'm going to take you guys along for the journey of apartment hunting in New York City. I'm going to give you guys the tips and tricks on how to find decent apartments at a decent price without paying broker fees. I actually have a shoot this morning at 10 a.m. so I figured I would use the extra time this morning to go view my first apartment. So let's go. First word of advice: when you are apartment hunting, I always like to walk to the neighborhood if I can, just so I can get a better idea of the surrounding areas. But because I'm a little bit pressed for time this morning, I am going to take public transit there. But it's also nice to take public transit there as opposed to Ubering, so you can see where the closest train stop is, where the closest bus stop is. I won't even look at a place that is more than 10 minutes away from the nearest metro station. Another note, if I'm taking public transportation, I definitely like to look at the nature of the metro station. If the metro station is super dirty and like chaotic, it also depends on the time of day that you're traveling, but ultimately if it's super messy, that kind of gives you a little bit of insight into the type of neighborhood that you're in. Typically I like doing tours in the late afternoon or evening because, as they say, the freaks come out at night. So you really get a better feel for a neighborhood in a realistic sense in the evening. But I have another showing this evening and I have to work today, so this morning slot was the best that I could do today. The downside to doing an apartment tour in the morning is you don't really get a good sense of the neighborhood because everyone is either in school or adults are at work or people are still sleeping in, so you don't really get a true sense of like the vibe of the neighborhood. So I would say best time of the day to do an apartment tour, if you feel safe and comfortable doing so, is definitely maybe between 4 and 7 p.m. when everyone's just starting to get off work. You can see the neighborhood at its most chaotic point, and if you're comfortable in a neighborhood at its most chaotic point, then you should be fine. Leave it open or close? I'll close it.
Tenant moved out, right?
I will say that these listing agents do a really good job at making the units look way better online than in person. It looks like the previous tenant left a ton of stuff, so sometimes it can be hard to see the vision before the unit is actually refreshed. I'm a landlord myself, so I get it.
Alright guys, first tour is done, and I could say definitely not for me. It has the amenities that I'm looking for, but the amenities are super old and run down, and I think after experiencing living in like luxury apartments in New York City, it's kind of hard to go back. So I definitely know exactly what I'm looking for, and that is not it. However, for the right person, it would be a great fit. I was expecting a 1-bedroom and it ended up being a 2-bedroom. I don't know if he would give me the same price for the 2-bedroom, but that's actually pretty convenient. I feel like if I weren't so bougie, it would actually be the perfect apartment. The location is seemingly not bad. There are quite a few new builds around the area. There's an elementary school nearby, so there are a lot of kids. And if you were to look at an actual neighborhood crime map, you typically don't see as much crime near elementary school. So whenever I'm touring an apartment that is near an elementary school, that is a good sign to me. So I am gonna head to set, and I will check in with you guys later tonight for my second apartment tour of the day. Okay, I know I look crazy, but I just got off work and we are at the second apartment tour of the day. I was supposed to have another one before this one, but I was still on set and I couldn't make it. So here we are. We have a walkway here. Closet. Nice spacious kitchen. Spacious living room, very spacious. Spacious bathroom. Very big bedroom, wow. Looks like a small closet though.
The closet is pretty small.
I never thought I would say this, but I am actually so overwhelmed and I've only seen just 2 apartments. That one was pretty amazing. I loved it. It was very spacious. Good morning, people. Happy Tuesday or Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is. First tour of the day. This one is a studio apartment, which ideally I would like a 1-bedroom, but this studio looks pretty spacious. And so I am personally targeting new buildings because I find that the pre-war buildings are more likely to have critters, meaning like rodents, mice, roaches, those little house centipede things. I'm really trying to avoid that for the sake of my mental health. I know I told you guys to do apartment tours in like the afternoon to the evening. However, I tried to do this one last night and she rescheduled till this morning, but I'm okay with viewing this one in the morning because I'm very familiar with the area. When I was doing apartment tours a few years ago, I toured several buildings in the area and I was really happy with the area, but I was shopping around with roommates and we all didn't agree on the space. So yeah, this definitely is a more lively area, but it's a neighborhood that I would feel safe in, and it's a neighborhood that I would feel comfortable navigating.
I would get lost in here.
Okay guys, we are back with the 4th apartment tour of this series, I believe. It's almost 7 o'clock at night, so I'm glad to be able to see the neighborhood at night. And so far, so good. The only downside is that it is right next to a subway station. So it is very loud. However, I guess I will see if you can actually hear the subway from inside of the building. The realtor is running a little bit late, but I'm glad I got here a few minutes early so I could just walk around and scope out the neighborhood.
The lighting in this building though, if I could just have this lighting follow me around all the time, I would be set. Yeah, you can barely hear the train.
So I really like that apartment. I feel like this has been a pretty successful apartment hunt. I'm gonna head home and I'm gonna let you guys in on a few tips and tricks on how to make your apartment hunting the most successful.
All right, so now that we are pretty much done with the apartment hunting, I can say that I'm like 99% sure I'm gonna get approved for the one that I want, and I am so excited. I feel like it's gonna make a big impact on my mental health. There's so much natural light in the space. I love the area, and so I really just think this is the step in the right direction to start 2026 on an amazing foot. While filming this video, I was thinking about my time in New York City, and I realized that I've moved 6 times in 6 years living in New York City. So I think I know a thing or two about moving in New York City and apartment hunting and making it the most seamless experience. So before I close out this video, I wanted to give you guys a few tips that I hope will make your apartment hunt a little easier. I know people get antsy with apartment hunting and they want to start looking at places like 3 months in advance, 4 months in advance. New York City does not work that way. You start looking for apartments when you're ready to move. Like if you find an apartment today, you should be ready to move by tomorrow. It is such a fast-paced city. Now, if you want to start browsing just to see what's on the market, just to see what is within your price range, just to see what landlords are offering, even though you're not ready to move, it's the same as where people just want to like look at houses on Zillow for fun. If you're not ready to move yet, that's fine. But once you're ready to pull the trigger, I would say you should not be looking for an apartment more than a month out. I say 4 weeks tops is when you should start your actual apartment hunting. Most listings are looking for tenants that they can approve for either the current month or the following month on the 1st. They're looking for a pretty quick turnaround time. So if you reach out to view a unit and they ask you what your move-in date is and you say 2 months from now, they're probably gonna ghost you or ignore you because they're looking for someone who can move in as soon as possible. Tip number 2 is to have your documentation ready. I feel like this is a mistake that I've made pretty much every time that I've moved. Once I find an apartment
apartment that I really like and they send me the application link, I'm like scrambling to get all the documentation that I need. Mind you, I'm fairly organized in my day-to-day life, so it's not that hard, but for someone who's a little bit more chaotic, it's gonna take you some time to pull all the documentation that you need. So once you know that you're ready to move, you're ready to start apartment hunting, just go ahead and compile all that documentation so you can send your application in as quickly as possible, because New York City is a very competitive market and it's really gonna be first come, first serve. The first qualified tenant that applies is the person that's gonna get the apartment. So the typical documentation that you wanna have ready is 3 months of pay stubs available. They may not ask for 3 months. They may just ask for 1 month, but I like to have 3 months on hand just in case, because not all management companies are created equal and not all of them ask for the same thing. Or a job offer letter if you've just started a job and you haven't yet received any pay stubs. You also want to have 3 months of bank statements available. This is going to be the bank that has the most savings and the bank that is receiving your deposits from work, because they want to verify those transactions. You want to have a photocopy of your ID. If you have rental history, you also want to have a full year of rental payments. So this is usually in the form of a ledger. If you live in a big building or a building that has a management company, typically they have like a portal where you're making your rental payments to, and so you'll be able to pull up a statement that shows all of the payments that you've made. Oftentimes they will ask for that. If you don't have a rental portal, you can pull up your bank statement and type in like rental payments made to Bob or whatever, and it'll show up all the payments that you've made to Bob, your landlord, and you'll be able to submit that as well. So just being able to show a full year of rental history. They're also going to ask for landlord's contact information, oftentimes a letter of reference or recommendation from a landlord saying that you are a great tenant, that you've made rental payments on time. Sometimes that will suffice. It also helps to have your most recent tax return, especially if you're a creative living in New York City. For example, if you are a model or a photographer or a theater performer, sometimes our pay can look a little wonky from month to month or from year to year. So it does help to have the tax return so that they can show what your annual income reported for last year and kind of use that as a baseline for the current year that you're applying for the apartment. You also want to make sure your credit is right and tight. 700 and above is ideal. And you want to make sure you are deposit ready and first month's rent ready. If you apply and you are approved, they're going to be wanting you to give them first month's rent and the deposit in order to secure the apartment. So just make sure you have those funds readily available. Sometimes they will offer the option for you to pay half of the deposit up front, just so that they can pull the listing from the market, meaning they won't show it to anyone else and it'll give you time to submit your application. Typically that will only hold the apartment for 24 hours and it is refundable. Let's say you apply and you're not approved, they will refund you that deposit minus the cost of the application fee, which is typically $20. And let's say you don't make enough money. Oftentimes it's 40 times the rent. If you don't show enough in income and you're using a guarantor, all of the documentation that I previously listed, make sure you also have that readily available for your guarantor. They're going to want to see that your guarantor makes 80 times the rent, since they're going to be vouching for you and they're going to be requesting that documentation as well to prove that income. For the apartment hunt itself, you can use websites like Zillow, StreetEasy, and Craigslist, but you can also use platforms like Facebook Marketplace or just Facebook groups in general. Join a lot of the Facebook housing groups, Facebook creative groups, Facebook sublet groups, Facebook roommate groups. There are so many New York City housing groups out there, and I find that sometimes it can be helpful when looking for roommates, or it can be helpful when looking for someone who's looking to break their lease. Oftentimes, if you find someone who's willing to break their lease, you can get into a nice unit at a lower cost because the landlord hasn't yet raised the rent because they're still in the middle of a lease term. And I will say, if you are looking on Craigslist, you do just have to be extra careful on Craigslist because it's not as, let's just say there are a lot of scams lurking on Craigslist, so never give any money up front. And if you are local to New York City, it's best to tour the apartment before giving any kind of deposits or anything like that, because you just would rather be safe, and this is some place that you're going to be living, so you want to make sure you like the neighborhood and the environment and the building, and so it's nice to see that in person. Speaking of seeing things in person, this is one of my favorite tips, but when apartment hunting and actually viewing the apartment, apartments. I say the best time to view an apartment is in the afternoon. So I would say anytime between 4 p.m. and like 6:30 p.m. because that is when the neighborhood is going to be the most lively. Kids are getting out of school, parents are getting home from work. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of traffic, and that's going to give you the best example of what the neighborhood is actually like. If you go view an apartment at 8 a.m., it's going to be kind of quiet. If you go view an apartment at 9 a.m., it's going to be quiet because the kids are in school, the parents are at work, the freaks are not out yet. You know how they like to see the freaks come out at night. They start coming out around the afternoon time. So that's the best time. And if living in a space with a lot of natural light is important to you, if you're touring in the fall and winter, you know it does typically get dark around 5. So if you go at 4, you can still see like a little bit of light in the sky, and it'll give you an idea of how much light your apartment gets, versus if you go at night, there's no way to tell how much natural sunlight your apartment is getting. And for me personally, natural light in the apartment is so important. I also recommend walking to the building if you are able to, just so I can get an idea of the neighborhoods I'm passing through. Do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? What type of activity am I seeing in the nearby neighborhoods or the neighboring neighborhoods? That is super important. Or if you take transit there, it's always nice to maybe get there a little earlier or stay behind and just walk around the neighborhood to see what the vibes are like. Take a look at your surroundings, what grocery stores are nearby, what restaurants are nearby. You just want to get a better idea of the neighborhood, and you get that by walking around. And my last tip for you guys is to do your apartment hunting in the winter. There's way less competition. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos on TikTok of people doing New York City apartment hunting, and the lines are like down the street. They're like blocks and blocks long. I've never waited in a line for an apartment because I literally always move in the wintertime. All 6 times I've moved in New York City, it's always been in the winter. I've never had any competition. I've always been able to submit applications to the apartments that I was interested in, and I've always immediately gotten approved just because there's not as much competition. Not only is there less competition, but because there's less competition, landlords are more likely to offer incentives. So oftentimes you'll see, oh, the first 3 months are free, or 18-month lease instead of a 12-month lease. So they're more likely to offer incentives because they're trying to get these units filled quickly, and they know not a lot of people are looking. So if you can swing it, definitely try to time your move with moving in the winter. So that's all that I have for you guys in today's video. I hope you found it helpful. Good luck in your apartment hunting, and hopefully in the next several videos you will see me filming in a new environment. So I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye! 'Cause I'm not just a pretty girl.